Welcome to Current Legal Issues for the New Dentist, DDS 6337. This is lecture number 1 or session 1 on your syllabus. This is our introductory lecture. You might wonder who I am and why I'm teaching this course. My name is Mary Lynn Ryan. I am a lawyer. My contact information is on this slide, and I recommend that if you want me to get a hold of you as soon as possible, to try me by my cell phone. Please send me a text. I probably won't answer the phone because I don't know your telephone number, and it will go straight to message. You can try me by email. I check my university email once or twice a day while this course is in session. I don't have an office on campus, but I'd be happy to arrange something with you in a coffee shop or lecture room, wherever it's convenient for both of us. Now, I'd like to give you a little background on how I came to be standing in front of you in this lecture. I was born in Minneapolis when the skyline looked like this. You'll notice that there's no IDS Center, and the cars are rather old. I got my bachelor's from the University of Minnesota. It's a picture of Rarig Hall from somewhere in the 80s is what it looks like. I'll leave it up to you to determine what I got my undergraduate degree in. I went west to get my law degree from Pepperdine University School of Law. It really does look like that. The campus is unbelievable. The ocean is blue. The law school has no windows, which was sad but necessary. Anyway, I graduated from Pepperdine and went into dental and medical malpractice liability defense. That's in courtroom defending doctors and dentists in malpractice actions. I then spent 2 years in-house with Applied Risk Management, which is the University of California System's self-employer. After that, I spent 2 years in-house at the California Medical Association, defending the CMA in litigation, writing liability materials, tort reform, grassroots efforts, amicus briefs. I wrote legislation, and then I also wrote materials related to professional liability. I then came back to Minnesota to have babies, pretty much. Right now I'm writing and editing the Claims RX, which is NorCal Mutual Insurance Medical Risk Management monthly publication. In that publication, I deal with HIPAA, privacy rights, informed consent, patient rights, corporate compliance, pain management, misdiagnosis, cognitive biases, and cultural competency in health literature. During that time, I also started doing websites for lawyers. The website content led to a webmaster job at the School of Dentistry, where my desk was outside of the dean's office. And so when they needed a legal issues professor, he came to me and asked me to do it, and that's what I did. So here I am, 7 years later. I also have a professional liability blog, and I've recently been fascinated with the role of heuristics and cognitive biases in mixed diagnosis, and how to teach healthcare professionals how to use debiasing and metacognition strategies to keep misdiagnosis from happening. I'm married. I have 2 children who are now age 15 and 16. I live in Uptown, which is very exciting. So, course information. My syllabus and almost everything else, handouts, all that is posted in Moodle. It's not static. It's going to change. The dates, the rooms, the speakers, everything kind of is subject to change because we use so many guest speakers. Handouts, PowerPoints, assignments, required reading, and suggested reading is posted in Moodle. It should be there in time for you to prepare to watch the lectures at the dates that the lectures are designated on the course syllabus. I think by this point, all of you are familiar with Moodle, so you probably won't need the Moodle student support. Competencies. I have listed here all of the competencies that this course is supposed to cover. Hopefully, by the end of this course, you will be competent in all of these areas. I will let you read these competencies yourself. They are also listed in the syllabus. All right, there are a number of books that I've listed for suggested reading. I don't test on these books, but I think that they'll be helpful for you within the next 2 years of your dental practice. The first one is Associateships, a guide for owners and prospective associates. This is one of the 2 books that I recommend from the American Dental Association. The Frequently Asked Legal Questions book, A Guide for Dentists and the Dental Team. That's also a very interesting book to look at. It covers legal questions and answers of some of the issues that I won't be able to get to in this class. The price of the books are approximately $89.95 for non-members and $134.95 regularly, but if you call up the ADA and talk to the guy who sells these books and tell him that you're a dental student, he will give you the member price, he says. So he told me. Anyway, another book that you might be interested in is Establishing, Managing, and Protecting Your Online Reputation. This book is written by Kevin Foe. He and Susan Gay did this book together, but I don't know if you have looked at Kevin Foe's blog. He is behind Kevin MD, which probably was at the forefront of medical blogs. He's been doing it for a really long time. He established his own reputation as a real leader in the field, and he answers questions like, how do you deal with a negative review on Yelp, and how do you establish yourself as a specialty provider in a particular market in your online marketing. Anyway, it's a very helpful book for exactly what it says, managing and protecting your online reputation. Getting to Yes is a negotiation book. It is probably the Bible on negotiation. It's been around forever. It's in its 3rd edition. I think the first came out in 1970s. I think when I first read it, I thought it was a little kumbaya, a little too touchy-feely, but it just so happens that that's what works in negotiation. So if you have trouble with the negotiation exercise at the end of this class, or if you want to get ready for the negotiation exercise and feel more comfortable in the negotiation process, I highly recommend getting this book and taking a look at it. And then the last book I want to tell you about is The Dentistry Laws and Rules. This is the book put out by the Minnesota Board of Dentistry. I have a link to how to purchase it in Moodle. It is a collection of all the dentistry laws and rules that you will need to take the jurisprudence exam. If you do not want to buy this book, all of this information is available on the Board of Dentistry's website. And it just really depends if you want to study for the jurisprudence exam by looking at a booklet full of information and you know that all the information that you need is right in front of you, or if you're more casual in your test taking and you can use the statutes and legislations that are posted on the Board of Dentistry website. And there's also a link to the Board of Dentistry website listings of the statutes and regulations that you'll be expected to know for the jurisprudence exam. So those are your 2 options for studying for the jurisprudence exam. And also we'll have a review of the materials coming up at the end of this course. So there's lots of ways to study for the jurisprudence exam. The next thing I'd like to talk about is grading. I changed this course from a graded to a pass-fail course a couple of years ago. Please note that you're going to need 80 points to pass. 60% of your grade is based on class projects and 40% of the grade is based on online exams. For the class projects, I decrease assignment grades by 1 point for every day that it's late. Please submit your assignments on time. Someone got a failing grade last year because she never submitted an assignment, and it's just a lot of work for you and for me to try to get that all figured out in the end. Also, please do the required reading that's posted in Moodle. It's very clear what I would like you to read before the lecture. The reading assignments are in there to give you the tools you need to get the most out of the lectures and projects. The exam questions are based on the required reading and the classroom lectures. Just watching the presentations online will not prepare you for the exams or for the assignments. My PowerPoint lectures, my PowerPoint presentations are not a substitute for the lectures. I like to use the PowerPoints to keep me on track as I lecture. I provide them to you to help you organize your notes. Some of the guest speakers do not use PowerPoint and they do not provide me with handouts. I will post any material provided to me by guest speakers as soon as I get it. I do ask them to get them to me early, at least by 3 days, but someone always sends me a PowerPoint the night before. So if you can just cut some slack, cut the guest lecturers a little slack. They come and they do the lectures for no compensation. So if things are in there a little late, it's just kind of, we've got to roll with it. But I do the best I can to get them in there, and so do they. The assignments all come with directions, although I welcome your questions via email, or you can come up to me and ask me questions after class. In grading assignments, I take into account organization, the quality of the writing, spelling, grammar, effort, and how well you follow directions. It's basically everything that you learned in middle school about handing in a paper. Please note the important dates in the syllabus. We have 3 assignments that have hard due dates, and there are 2 online exams that are open for 24-hour periods. Okay, so on to the jurisprudence exam. If you are not going to practice in Minnesota, you don't have to take the Minnesota jurisprudence exam, but you're probably going to need to take a jurisprudence exam in your practice state. If you plan to take the exam here, you want to know what's in the Dentistry Laws and Rules, which is available from the Minnesota Bookstore and the Board of Dentistry website. We did just talk about this. If you are ordering your book from the bookstore, you go online, and it takes about 1 to 2 weeks for them to send it to you. So if you want to start studying for the jurisprudence exam, you're going to want to take that into account. Also for the jurisprudence exam, we have Bridget Anderson, who is the Director of Policy Development at the Minnesota Dental Association, and Dr. David Lind, who are going to come in and cover the specific aspects of the Minnesota laws that we believe are going to be covered on the jurisprudence exam. You are responsible for scheduling your own exam. Scheduling information is available in the Moodle section for today's lecture. If you're considering practicing in Minnesota, but you're not sure, this test result is good for 5 years. So for example, if you're going to go and do a residency and you know that it's going to take 2 years, but you're planning on coming back and practicing in Minnesota after it's done, you probably want to take your jurisprudence exam now while we have all of these preparation materials available to you, and in this period of your life when you're doing a lot of exam taking, it's going to be good for 5 years. You have to apply for licensure within 5 years of taking the exam for it to be good, however. The course is organized into various topics. I try to make it logical when we're going through it. There are a couple of topics that don't quite fit in anywhere, and I kind of just had to put them into the middle. That would be the infection control and employment law. But otherwise, things group pretty well together. So the first thing that we're going to cover is torts and dentistry. During the torts and dentistry lectures, we're going to talk about getting sued by patients for malpractice, premises liability, lack of informed consent, defamation, how to avoid it, and how to protect yourself when it happens. We're also going to deal with dental records. That'll be our second area of topics. We're going to talk about getting sued by the government for poor medical record practices, risk management regarding record keeping, how dental records are used in litigation, HIPAA, etc. Dental practice acquisitions. These lectures are primarily lectures about money and taxes. We're going to hear from Ron Barthel, Ron Sarzinski, and Robin Johnson from Baker Tilly. They probably know more about accounting for dentists than any other accountants in Minnesota. They have a lot of good information to you. They'll talk about how practices are valued and how to structure a buy-in from a financial perspective. The information that you learn here will help you complete the third assignment and will help you negotiate your associateship agreement or purchase agreement. The next area of practice that we're going to cover is contracts and contract negotiation. We will talk practically about how to understand the contracts you're going to be encountering your first years out in practice. This includes employment agreements, lease agreements, agreements with independent contractors, website development, third-party dental insurance agreements, and all of that sort of thing. Anytime you are presented with a contract, you can try to get a better deal for yourself. You need to be prepared. We're going to talk about things like that. We're going to go over the fact that lawyers will review contracts for you to make sure you're agreeing to what you think you are agreeing to, but for the most part, you are going to be the one who is going to be negotiating your contract. Lawyers are really expensive, especially the lawyers that are going to be coming in and talking to us. These are the kind of lawyers that you're going to want to hire to review your contracts. I think the lawyers that are lecturing on these topics bill at close to $400 an hour. So you're not going to want to throw $400 an hour at them to go negotiate your contracts when in fact you have all the skills to negotiate a contract with a hiring dentist by yourself. I've posted a lot of negotiation resources and practice links. In the past, students have commented that they wish they had the opportunity to practice before doing the negotiation for assignment number 3. There are a lot of different resources for practicing. Like anything else, you get better at negotiating with practice. Try negotiating for everything. Negotiate for a piece of bruised fruit at the farmer's market. Negotiate with your children. Negotiate with your husband. Negotiate over a stain on a shirt that you want to buy for less money at Macy's, whatever. Get your practice there because it's really all the same thing. It's just negotiation and not a contract. Negotiation is the hardest and the easiest thing, and you've been doing it for all of your life, so don't be afraid of it. Into dental practice regulations. Although these lectures will be Minnesota focused, all states have somewhat similar laws to regulate the practice of dentistry. The lectures are also meant to help you prepare to take the jurisprudence exam, but if you're not taking the Minnesota jurisprudence exam, you should still watch these lectures and attend the lectures in person, because what we're going to be talking about here not only involves how laws are made, which is the same in all jurisdictions pretty much, but also how the dental board enforces the practice regulations and how you defend yourself in the face of a dental board action against you. Employment law. We have Jessica Rowe coming to lecture for our employment law discussion. She'll talk about discrimination, hiring and firing, harassment, privacy, safety, fair wages. I added an employment law lecture this year because I wanted you to have a sense of why you're required to treat your employees in certain ways and why you should be doing things like putting together policy booklets. Almost everything in employment comes from a law or a regulation. There are some things that we are not going to be covering in this legal issues class. This class is not an extension of the practice management class. The objective of this class is to introduce you to and teach you how to deal with the laws and regulations and legal concepts you may encounter in dental practice. We can get a little theoretical, but it does end up being practical in the end. I recommend the ADA Legal Questions book for questions about issues that we do not cover, and there are quite a few of them. Now, let's go on to some interesting recent dental cases. The first case that we're going to look at is Wu. This is one of my favorites. Wu versus Fireman's Fund Insurance Company. This was decided by the Washington State Supreme Court in July 2007. The plaintiff in this case was a surgical assistant in a dental office. According to her original complaint, during the 5 years of her employment, the business owner, Dr. Wu, learned of her interest in potbelly pigs and her pet pig, Walter. He began to make offensive comments to her about pigs and then showed her pictures of his boar hunting trip and a skinned pig hanging on a hook and made comments like, "There's how Walter will look." Nonetheless, when the surgical assistant chipped a baby tooth that had never been replaced by a permanent tooth, she asked Dr. Wu to remove the chipped tooth and another tooth and give her implants. He agreed, and according to usual procedure, temporary false teeth known as flippers were created for the surgical assistant to wear until the teeth were replaced by permanent implants. But Dr. Wu ordered additional flippers designed in the shape of boar tusks. While the surgical assistant was under general anesthesia, her oxygen mask was removed, the boar tusks were replaced into her mouth, and photographs were taken showing her eyes and mouth pried open and the tusks protruding from her mouth. The boar tusks were then removed and the procedure was completed. Other staff members later gave the surgical assistant the boar tusks and the pictures. Not surprisingly, she quit. She then filed a lawsuit against the oral surgeon for assault, outrage, battery, invasion of privacy, false light, public disclosure of private facts, non-payment of overtime wages, retaliation, medical negligence, lack of informed consent, and negligent infliction of emotional distress. Her husband also claimed outrage, loss of consortium, and negligent infliction of emotional distress, and her mother claimed outrage and negligent infliction of emotional distress. So this was a huge lawsuit. However, Dr. Wu's insurer, Fireman's Fund Insurance, refused to pay for the defense, or for his lawyers, in other words, and all the fees that go along with defending a claim like this. Anyway, they refused to defend him on the medical malpractice claims on the grounds that the acts alleged in the lawsuit did not arise out of the provision of dental services. It refused to defend under the employment practices liability provisions on the grounds that the complaint did not allege sexual harassment, discrimination, or wrongful discharge, as those terms were defined by the policy. And it refused to defend under the general liability provision on the grounds that the alleged practical joke was intentional and was not considered a business activity. Ted Deisty is going to come in and talk to the class about all of these different insurance coverages in the 6th lecture. So all of those terms that I just talked about are going to be more familiar after that lecture. Now, because Fireman's Insurance refused to defend him, Dr. Wu paid his attorney out of his own pocket, and he settled with the surgical assistant just prior to trial for $250,000. However, after that, Dr. Wu brought suit against Fireman's Insurance, alleging that the breach of duty to defend under the professional employment practices and general liability provisions of his insurance policy were violated. In other words, he brought a bad faith lawsuit against his insurer. The jury in that case found that Fireman's Insurance failed to act in good faith, and they awarded the oral surgeon damages in the amount of $750,000. So that's the settlement amount for $250,000, attorney fees, and court costs. So Dr. Wu came out $500,000 ahead on this case. Fireman's Fund appealed, the Court of Appeals reversed, but then the Washington Supreme Court reversed the Court of Appeals. So Dr. Wu, although he wasted a lot of money, ended up getting $500,000 from his insurer for this hijinks in the end of it all. Anyway, an interesting case. Another case that's pretty interesting is Fanning versus Trustee. In this case, the patient had gone to the emergency dental after a pain in her molar worsened. Dr. Trusty gave her Novocaine, and while he was drilling to break the molar into quadrants before the extractions, Fanning heard a snap. The drill bit broke. Dr. Trusty used a metal hook to try to get the drill bit out, but it pushed the drill bit farther up, driving it through the sinus and bone. It came to rest by her eye socket. The drill bit was removed by somebody else, but Dr. Trusty's original efforts to remove the drill bit significantly damaged the patient's sinus cavity. This case probably would not have attracted any attention because it's fairly common to see a fact pattern like this. However, during the molar extraction, the dentist was dancing to the song Car Wash, which is a chart-topping 1976 disco tune that is the theme of the movie of this same name. So he got in trouble not necessarily because of what he had done, which wasn't great, but we don't know whether it was negligent is questionable. But the problem was that he was dancing around while he was doing it. So this disco dancing made his case almost indefensible, and it ended up being settled instead of dismissed or taking it to trial. So don't disco dance while removing molars from your patients. It's the lesson there. State v. Burks. You can tell that this is a criminal action by the citation of the case. It says State versus Burks. When there's state in the caption, you know that it's a criminal case. So this case is about Jeffrey Burks, who's an oral surgeon, former chief forensic dental consultant in the New York City Medical Examiner's Office. He pleaded guilty to criminal sale of a prescription for a controlled substance. During trial, he admitted he gave his patient, who was also his girlfriend, illegal prescriptions for Vicodin and other drugs. He was ordered to do 150 hours of community service and to go to psychiatric treatment. Prosecutors began investigating the dentist after the girlfriend's sister told authorities that she was worried about her sister's relationship with the dentist, which she described as sex for drugs. The dentist faced up to 15 years in prison had he been convicted at trial, so he entered into a plea bargain. He lost his license during this. So that shows you what can happen with drugs prescription problems. Not an unusual case, although a far long fall for this forensic dentist. This is another one of my favorite cases. This is a case where a dentist who was also a city commissioner was charged with a felony after he was caught improperly videotaping his workers, his female employees in the changing room. He was charged with a felony and got 5 years of community supervision with deferred adjudication, which basically just means that if you fulfill the terms of your deferred adjudication, the charges are dropped. As part of the agreement, the dentist agreed to attend sex offender counseling, although he didn't have to register as a sex offender, which is probably part of his plea agreement. He also had to submit to his computers being monitored for inappropriate material and was ordered to pay up to $1,000 in counseling expenses for the victims. They also later sued him in civil court, and those actions were settled. So not all cases against dentists are this crazy. These are just some of the ones that end up being carried by various news articles and blogs, and they get a lot of attention. But the regular cases don't get as much attention, but these are fairly common. Okay, this is a case that, as you can see from the slide, has a huge, huge multi-million-dollar verdict. And cases like this are fairly unusual. This is a case that caused brain damage, and that's why the damages are so high. So, here are the facts of the case. During a third molar extraction, the dentist discovered that part of the tooth was fused to the jawbone. He stopped the procedure and told the patient to go to the hospital to have the extraction completed. That night, the patient went to an ED with significant pain and severe facial swelling. He was then transferred to a hospital where an oral surgeon diagnosed him with subcutaneous air emphysema and residual roots, which were removed. The patient filed a malpractice lawsuit against the dentist and oral surgeon, alleging the procedures had caused nerve damage, chronic pain, a fractured jaw, memory loss, migraines, permanent loss of taste, fear, anxiety, and depression. He also claimed that neither physician had obtained an informed consent. So this case is a lack of informed consent. It has a $2 million verdict is what the jury awarded in this case. The facts of the case are the patient went into a walk-in dental clinic with a chipped tooth. When she saw the dentist, he recommended removing 3 teeth and fitting her with a partial upper denture. Then the oral surgeon came in, and instead of pulling the 3 teeth, he pulled all of her upper teeth without even referencing the treatment plan or obtaining the patient's consent. In this case, in addition to his not getting the patient's consent or reviewing the records, he altered the other medical records, which is always a problem and which is something that you should never do because it's almost impossible to defend a case with altered medical records. The $2 million verdict was reduced to just over $400,000 because Pennsylvania has tort reform that limits malpractice verdicts. So if the same, and in a place like Minnesota, which does not have this kind of tort reform, the same case would still be a $2 million verdict because the lack of tort reform nothing would reduce the verdict. So a $2 million verdict, when you think of it, most dental policies are $1 million policies. So you're looking at a damage result that's $1 million in excess of your policy. So these are scary cases. So this is kind of your common case, not the multi-million-dollar case. These are nerve damage cases. There are a whole lot of them. In this case, an injection was given in the lower left side of the patient's mouth prior to a root canal of tooth number 19. The dentist damaged the plaintiff's left lingual nerve during a mandibular block injection. As a result, the plaintiff's left lip became permanently numb. The jury found that the injection was given improperly and was the cause of the injury, and they awarded a verdict of $250,000. This is also kind of a rare case because this case went to verdict. Most medical malpractice and dental malpractice actions are settled before they ever get to court. The next thing I want you to look at is the Board of Dentistry disciplinary actions. These are posted on the Board of Dentistry's website. I give you the URL so that you can go and look at them yourselves. It's interesting reading, mostly because it's just the small things that you wouldn't think of that can get you into trouble. So you can go to the board website and just kind of look around and see what got other people into trouble. The National Practitioner Data Bank contains information on the following actions against physicians and dentists: adverse licensure actions, clinical privilege actions, professional society membership actions, paid medical malpractice judgments and settlements, exclusions from participation in Medicare and Medicaid programs, that's usually because of billing problems, billing fraud, and registration actions taken by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. That would be selling pills, for example. The law, this is a federal law, specifies that the National Practitioner Data Bank make reports available to hospitals, healthcare entities with formal peer review, professional societies with formal peer review, state licensing authorities, healthcare practitioners. That means that you can self-query. It's only available for you to look to see if you have some National Practitioner Data Bank data on file. And in limited circumstances, it's available to plaintiffs' attorneys. the National Practitioner Data Bank is prohibited from disclosing specific information on practitioners to the general public, so you don't have to worry about the general public getting this information. State reporting statutes are fairly similar, so basically when any of these things happen, they're reported both to the National Practitioner Data Bank and the State Dental Licensing Authority. That brings us to the end of our first lecture. For the next lecture, I would like you to read a case called Bach versus Florida State Board of Dentistry, in which the Florida Board of Dentistry argues that dental licenses can be compared to liquor licenses. Despite this, it's a very good example of case law being used to define statutory language about delegation of duties to a dental hygienist. I've provided a link to it in Moodle so that you can go and read it and see how it looks when lawyers read it. All right, thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next lecture.